And I like to talk to the partners too. I'm like, have your partner call me, because guess what? Do you want to have a relationship? Because the Gottman Institute says that most divorces either happen the first year, or when people say, where did the problem start? It's the first year after having a baby. And it's important for families to be intact. It's important for a baby to have two parents that love each other.
So we liked you so much, Kimberly Johnson, that we're having you back on to talk about your other book, The Fourth Trimester. So actually, before we get started, I want you to introduce yourself, because I would love to hear, how did you get inspired to write this book? Tell us about your story.
For having me again. So I was a yoga teacher and a bodyworker, a structural integration practitioner, which is also called Rolfing. And I'd been doing that work for about 12 years. And then I had a baby, and my life got turned upside down, inside out, in all kinds of ways that I wasn't expecting. And as a result of that, in healing myself after giving birth, I learned the modalities that were the ones that helped me heal the most, which were sexological bodywork and somatic experiencing trauma resolution work. And then
before you if you guys don't understand this, you need to check out last week's episode. And Kimberly Johnson was on, and we talked, and we did a big deep dive into that. Okay, go.
And then I became a birth doula, and I'm a single mom. I have now a 13-year-old daughter. So that's kind of about me. But the people that I primarily help, I help women heal from birth injuries, birth trauma, gynecological surgeries, and sexual boundary violations. So that's really my work in the world. And I came to the work, this phase of it, as I said, because I was just so surprised by my own postpartum experience. This is now 13 years ago. So the world has changed a lot in those 13 years, and it's amazing. And, I'm so proud that my book has also been a part of that. This 2016 election was the first time that maternal leave policy here in the US was discussed. Y'all are in Canada, so you have a better situation than we do in terms of parental leave. But policy is changing. I think social media has really brought the postpartum experience to the forefront. Unfortunately, I do still feel that has a negative valence. I still feel that a lot of people use the word postpartum synonymously with depression. But back then, when I was in Brazil, with my newborn, and I was not feeling right. My back was hurting. My SI joint was whacked out. I had fecal incontinence. I was having a real struggle breastfeeding. I was searching on Google, holistic postpartum, alternative postpartum, all these things. And the only thing that came up was postpartum depression. And the only thing those articles said was, it's normal to feel postpartum depression. And I just was like, that cannot be normal. It just can't be normal. That what I'm feeling is not just a personal problem. It's an archetypal problem, and it's a structural problem. And I was just flabbergasted that, coming from Boulder, Colorado, sort of the bastion of the healing world, that I had nothing that was going to help me. So I really dug deep. I went and lived in Thailand for a while. I went to Malaysia and studied some other cultures that actually know how to care for the mother-baby dyad after birth. And what I suspected was true was that, had I had different kind of care that actually valued not just this whole thing about mental health, and the only solution we have to postpartum care is mental health checklist, is just so incomplete. And it shows all the ways that our culture is so out of balance.
It is so true. I mean, your book completely rang true for me and my own personal experience. And as I told you in our last podcast, we see a lot of people for fertility. And then, what happens is that there's a drop off because they physically can't come in. And so there's a huge missing that, they go and have their baby and then they vanish. And I know, and research actually says that there is a truth, though, about 71% of women experience postpartum blues. And then 21%, I believe, actually do get in a depressed state. Well, because they have all these unresolved things and not prepared, as you're talking about, like in our history through our ancestors or, different cultural upbringings, that really did guide women. But we've lost it all. Even I'm Chinese, and there is the whole mother warming technique, but living in North America, like you miss out on a lot of these things unless you consciously bring it in and learn about it, right? It used to be that in societies, we were living in a community, and now we're all individual units, family units. And so we lose so much of that. So I loved your book, and literally I tell everybody.
Now we have to hire people to do what our neighbors and our families used to do. So, we've kind of like outsourced this role of neighbor, acquaintance, family member. I think that this is changing. I mean, I do think that people are more aware. There's, it's very hard when you're having a first baby and there's this birth that's out in front of you to think of anything other than that birth, right? So I was like, probably most people are. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to give birth. And I wasn't really afraid of it. I was actually pretty super excited about it. But either way, I had changed my whole life for the birth. I had moved to another city so I could have the home birth midwife that I wanted. I always knew I wanted a home birth. I had basically spent all my money on setting myself up for the birth. And I didn't have any resources monetarily or people-wise because I was living out of the country. So I didn't have my parents there. I didn't have, I didn't have friends. I had just moved to the place. But the thing is what works postpartum is really a recipe just for good life, right? And you know it from TCM. And we also know that part of the reason it's so difficult is because we don't have anything in place for menstrual care. So if when we were menstruating and that entrance into womanhood, we actually were educated about our cycles and how they work and how our energy works during them and how to rest, because let's face it, we know we should rest, but most people don't know how to rest. So then when you're on forced rest, people are so anxious, right? It's like there's so much, I was going to say agita, it's like a Yiddish word, but there's like so much angst that's happening because we're not used to slowing down, and our value is all attached to how much we do and how much we get done and how capable we are. And even our partners have bought into that. So our partners are going, oh my gosh, she's so weak. She's so vulnerable. She's not doing anything. Yeah, because she just had a baby.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Everything that the new baby needs, a new mom also needs. And it just gets right to the heart of our disrespect for the feminine, our disrespect for yin, our sort of disgust for anything that's not forward driving, forward moving, predictable. And so it's actually an incredible opportunity. And that's why I wrote this book, because, my second book that we talked about last week, The Call of the Wild, I own that book. Like I am that book. Like I am that jaguar. This fourth trimester, this is something that I didn't have. And I thought I would have another chance to have it at some point, but I never had it. So it's like, what I could offer is, okay, I didn't know. And it's not my fault that I didn't know. I'm not uneducated. I had sought all kinds of knowledge. It wasn't out there. Once I went looking, there were some great books. Aviva Romm wrote an excellent book, Natural Health After Birth, in the 2000s. Robin Lim, After the Baby's Birth, incredible book also. It just kind of wasn't in the zeitgeist yet. The other book I love is from a Toronto author, actually, and it's Between Heaven and Earth.
Oh, yes.
You know this one, with a Chinese medicine practitioner.
Just two. Yeah.
About postpartum as well. So they were out there, but it just wasn't, and also, so nowadays people have my book, they have Han's book, The First 40, they have, there's more resources. And with those resources, a lot of times when people tell their family or they tell their partner or they tell their mothers, they are treated like they're being a diva. Like, well, why do you need all this stuff? I didn't need all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, because like my mom had 3 babies, 3 episiotomies, 3 pelvic floor repairs, and I didn't even know that. And I'm the oldest. I'm like, I was like thinking, when were you going and getting these things? Like, when were those repairs happening? So it's like, we just didn't talk about what was happening. And my grandmother gave birth anesthetized, like completely anesthetized. So we just lost this intergenerational transmission. Breastfeeding, same thing. My mom wanted to breastfeed me, but my grandma was like, why are you doing that? Don't bother with that. Just give her formula. What are you doing? So uncomfortable with seeing a breast, so uncomfortable. And she hadn't done it because she was, had her kids as baby boomers. So they were incentivized not to breastfeed. So there's just so much repair that has to happen. But, it's possible, and it's actually simple. And I think it makes a lot of common sense when you hear it. It just requires that we deprogram ourselves a little bit from who we think we should be and who we want to be. Because even if you know this, I talked to a friend of mine who had a baby last week, and she's a practitioner. She's an Ayurvedic doctor. She's a yoga teacher. She teaches the feminine. And she really close to the camera, I thought that knowing all that stuff was going to make this easier. And somehow I wasn't going to feel vulnerable. And it's yeah, again, it's not the mind, it's the body. The physiology, we are unprotected when we have a new mother. That's why we need other people protecting us. And we are still in an altered state. And so we don't know what's good for us. For me, it was as simple as I thought going for a walk was good for me. Doesn't that sound... That sounds pretty normal, but from somebody who used to do hours and hours and hours of yoga a day, a walk around the block. But actually it was making my prolapse worse because I wasn't totally healed yet. And I work with that a lot of people who were not prolapsed after birth. And then they're prolapsed after postpartum because they didn't slow down at all. They didn't stay out of gravity. So we just really need to normalize a period of time, at least 40 days, if not 3 months, where we're out of gravity and we're taken care of. And we can't do it perfectly because our culture doesn't have it set up. So no one's going to be able to do this perfectly. And life happens, and there's NICUs and there's family visitors and all those things. But we can do a little more than we might normally do. And in doing that little more, the people and our children, all genders of our children will understand that this is something that's really necessary.
So powerful.
Mm-hmm. There is such a negative connotation with being a diva if you have that postpartum doula care and you're nourishing yourself. But really, in my mind, there's no other alternative. And I was completely not expecting the postpartum, the physical aspect of it, being afraid to have the first poo, for example, because I birthed vaginally and had tears. I pushed baby Griffin out too quickly. And I love in your book how you talk about everyone at the 6-week postpartum checkup. It shouldn't just be a 10-minute, okay, your uterus is back in shape. Great. You're good to go. And that's your recovery. You can go back to work. And, just the concept of see a physical therapist, even if you didn't tear, just to have everything assessed and then get care. Right. So yeah.
And people are real surprised. Even people who have cesarean deliveries will say, well, my pelvic floor feels awful. And it's well, you had a baby, you carried a baby for somewhere between 8 and 9 months sitting on your pelvic floor. I don't really like the words pelvic floor, but whatever, your pelvic hammock, your sling.
So what do you call it?
A hammock or sling.
Love it.
Because we're not a house, we talk about vaginal walls. They're not really walls.
Right. You're right.
They're
that.
They're shape-shifting sea anemone amazingness.
Yes. Nice.
Lovely.
Love it.
Exactly.
But a lot of people, no matter how they birthed, have challenges in their pelvis afterwards. And I've found with cesareans, a lot of times when I've done that work and help people with scar tissue, and I've found that a lot of people, because they're why is my vagina tight or hurting? And I had a cesarean delivery. And it's because the body it's not complete with something leaving it. And so it doesn't want anything coming in. There's there's an incomplete cycle I've even worked on cesarean scars and internally, and the uterus starts contracting and does the contractions that it never had a chance to do if somebody just had a scheduled C or didn't labor.
Wow.
So the body has these incomplete cycles, and they're visceral and physical. And as women, we have more opportunities for incomplete cycles because we have more cycles, period. So it's really important to attend to those things. And, other cultures know this. In Ayurveda, they say 42 days for 42 years. there's a reason why there's special words for this time in Chinese. I don't know how to pronounce it right, but sitting the next is why I just heard Han say it again, but I didn't record it correctly. But anyway, there's all kinds of words, sacred window for this period of time. And in Swahili, there's a term mama toto, which means mother baby, where they're not separate. It's not a mother and a baby, it's mother baby. So the unit needs to be cared for. And we would never think of leaving a new baby alone for hours on end. We would never think of letting a baby go without eating food. We would never think of putting a baby in a place with tons of loud noise and lots of things. Well, some people do, but most people would know not to do that. And a new mother needs everything that the new baby needs. We need a constant food source. We need to be swaddled. We need loving eye contact. We need to know that we're held and protected.
Both
I
ways,
love how
yes, both directions.
And I love how you talk about physical touch and in that healing period for the mom, not just for the baby. It's so important. And this postpartum period can make or break the rest of your life. I've heard so many patients say, I've been never well since my birth.
Exactly. And like, some people, so my negative reviews on Amazon are either like, she's a woo-woo hippie person. So fine, that's not a good match. But they're also about like, this is so unrealistic. Like, I reject this book because it's impossible. It's so unrealistic. And it's like, that's sad. Like if it's unrealistic for us to even imagine having a woman, it's 6 weeks. It's not 6 years. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, and people say it's expensive and all those things. And I like to talk to the partners too. I'm like, have your partner call me, because guess what? Do you want to have a relationship? Because the Gottman Institute says that most divorces either happen the first year, or when people say, where did the problem start? It's the first year after having a baby. And it's important for families to be intact. It's important for a baby to have two parents that love each other. So, it's not like I'm not married and I'm a single parent, so I don't have that, but it's still ideal. So it's the fact that we can't even fathom it is actually pretty upsetting, that seems so outside of the realm, because we're so forward moving and we can't imagine. And it's expensive trying to fix it 5 years down the road.
Yes.
Right.
In 10 years and 20 years.
Yes.
So I love this. And, we need to talk then about, well, what is that ideal period look like? Can we speak to that? Yeah.
So when I was looking at these cultures that have some intact postpartum care in place, there were 5 universal needs that I identified. And I look at them like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you need to have them from bottom up. So in order of importance. And the first one is rest, an extended rest period. So we've kind of talked a lot about that already, but it's basically like 5 days in the bed, 5 days on the bed, 5 days around the bed. So that's 15 days just in your room where you're not really leaving, just around your bed. And then the rest of that time is minimal movements, minimal times going up and down stairs, not leaving the house for about 6 weeks. And across the board, that's the sort of period of time that cultures have. And I've also, there's so many different things that are going on with birth. It's like, if you have a baby at 32 weeks, then that 8 weeks doesn't really count as postpartum, because developmentally, both as a mom and a baby, that's still their incubation period. So it would be that 8 weeks plus another 6 weeks. That would be like an actual 40 days, or any kind of like high stress experience is going to take more time for you to let that all shift out. And in that time, you need other people caring for you. So there's this idea, because I consider myself a feminist. And I think, among people listening, most people are going to say, yeah, I'm a feminist. Like, I believe in equal rights and I believe in chore division. But there's this idea that like, it's like equal care of the baby. So like, I'll go over to people's house postpartum and they're like handing a crying baby back and forth to each other. But what really needs to happen is the partner needs to support the mom or the birthing person to support the baby.
Absolutely.
So equal care of the baby actually doesn't work. And it's because biology wired it that way. We have estrogen and oxytocin, and those hormones predispose us to be attuned to what the baby needs. So I hear so many women, they're pissed because they're like, I know what the baby needs before my partner does. And I'm like, yeah.
You're wired.
You are wired to know.
That's great.
The
Yes.
divine design.
Yes.
And we can push against it and rail against it and feel that it's unfair. But to me, what I've seen is that really complicates people's recovery because they had this idea that everything could be equal. It can't be equal. We're not equal. Right. It just can't be.
It's so true. So to have those conversations ahead of time, even in your PDFs in the back of your book, conversations about expectations and how to
and how you deal
have
with
your partner support you.
Job. Because the partner normally really wants to do a good job. They're trying to do a good job. And they're trying, most of the couples that I work with, the partners are super progressive and involved in doing their best, but they just need to be sorted out of like, well, what's your role? And if they know their role and you know your role, then at least you have something to revert back to. So that's what there's a postpartum sanctuary plan in my book is like, questions like, how do you know to deal with stress? What do you need from me? How can we stay connected? What's going to feel connected to you? If we get off track, how are we going to get back on track? On the flip side, I see people freaking out and like going on date nights at 4 weeks postpartum because they're like afraid of losing their relationship. It's like, this is a time when everything changes and we don't need to grasp to everything that was. We need to just be present with what's happening. But in that time, the best thing you can do as a partner or for yourself and have your partner, I don't know, call me, is invest in this time. Yes. Because that's how do you recover quickly? You don't do anything for 6 weeks except for eat warm foods, do vaginal steaming so your pelvic floor can repair itself to the extent that it can. The stitches don't hurt if you have them. So anyway, the bottom one is rest. That's number one. The second one is nutrient-rich food. So across the board, warm food, at first, very easy to digest. So soft foods like khichdi, broth, once you get through the initial phase of all of the detoxing that needs to happen with the hormonal flush, then you're going to want to use building foods. And those foods have a lot of collagen because the ligamental structures need to rebuild themselves. And the rest is also because gravity pulls on ligaments. And so if you're standing up and you're doing things, your ligaments that are like taffy are more likely to stretch. And we want them to become more like bouncy rubber balls. And in order to do that, you have to be out of gravity. That's why in Mexican culture, they have the faja and the rebozo so that and in Malaysia, they have belly binding. It's so that the structure has support. And most North Americans are like, well, I don't want to do that because then my belly is going to get weaker because my abdominal muscles aren't going to work. Well, guess what? Your abdominal muscles aren't going to work anyway. So you might as well give them a little bit of support so that 6 weeks in, you can take it off. And then there's a semblance of where the organs need to be. The third one is loving touch. So my friends who live in Taiwan, when they're pregnant, they hire a baby nurse. That's the first thing they do when they find out they're pregnant. And then that baby nurse comes and lives in their house 6 days a week. And the baby nurse is for them and their baby. So the baby nurse wakes up, makes the teas and the breakfast and lunch, then bathes the baby, bathes the mother, gives the baby body work, gives the mother body work, and makes sure that they're on a routine, that they're eating frequently, the right things, and that they're also getting body work. And it's not just for rich people. It's not just for spoiled people. It's for every person who has a baby. It's not like here in the States, it's like, I say, well, have you had any body work? And people are like, well, I went for one massage, like I treated myself. This body work and loving touch, it could be self oil massage. It could be acupressure. You could do Jinshin on yourself. It's good to have you be receiving because you're giving so much and orchestrating it. I believe that if every woman had one person come to their house for 3 hours a week for 6 weeks, we would see a radical shift in postpartum depression. I've been noodling on that. I wrote a book in the meantime. It's in the back of my mind. If somebody out there has a policy initiative or like has some major way that they can make that happen, take the idea and run with it. I think we should take retired women who don't have really a role in society, and match them up with postpartum women. And then that person can go and be, set up a steam, make a couple of meals, and be an attuned listener for what the person who gave birth needs.
Which is so great, because again, we're because we're lacking that. And now when women are tending to be a little bit more mature, we're in that sandwich generation where your parents, even if they wanted to help, they're not even in a position to help, right? Or if you're even so lucky to have a parent there, right? A lot of them have perished. And then, so you're having to carry at both ends, but really it's like, oh my gosh, you're left alone and you can't even care for yourself, and you want to, or actually, it's not even in their mind. It's not in their radar. They even want to help because they're so focused on, oh my gosh, I have to care for my elderly parents, or I have to care for this infant baby, and I'm wearing like 10 hats and it's just me. Tough, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I understand most of the time in almost all the work that I do, there's a fair amount of grief, because when we hear it, we're like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And oh my gosh, that's so far away from anything that I can even imagine. Because, statistically, most women go back to work after 2 weeks. So it's like, even just having 6 weeks off work is a luxury in this country. But the people that I'm speaking to, and I've helped people who are literally working at McDonald's and went back to work after 2 weeks. And it's like, okay, well, what can that person do? Well, when you get home, turn off all your lights, get in bed right away, get yourself a hot cup of tea, and, put an eye wrap over your eyes and really totally shut off. So don't make the mistake of getting home and scrolling on your cell phone and like whittling away other energy. Yeah, you have to go to work and you have to be on your feet. Okay, that's good. But what can we do in the rest of the time? And the same goes for anyone. It's like, okay, so you had X, Y, and Z planned. Can you just do a little bit more? Can you ask someone for help? It's so uncomfortable for us to ask for help. And I know, because it's still uncomfortable for me. And like right now, I'm a single mom. I'm launching a book. I've got a new website, a new podcast. I'm on quarantine because I got exposed to COVID. And it's like, it's still hard to ask for help. I need a lot of help. My parents live down the street, and everyone's like, well, did you ask your parents to do this or that? It's like, yeah, I asked them for one thing, but it's hard for me to ask them for 5 things, even though they would probably do the 5 things. So we just have to practice asking for help and receiving it.
So Kimberly, we're going to send this podcast to your parents so they can hear. No, look at your face. We want more help for you, for all of us women that are always, we're like burning the candle at both ends, and, bringing it back to Chinese medicine. When we're in our postpartum period, we're in a place of deficiency. So it is time. It's necessary. It's not a luxury, right? It's a time to be quiescent so that you can build back up.
We like, even the word deficient, it's like, we want to like, it's like people will be like, well, deficient, that sounds negative. Well, it's like, but it's true. Yeah. Like we are like, people are like, well, weak, that sounds really negative, because vulnerability is strength or whatever. It's like, can we just be okay with the fact that it's a deficient state?
Yep.
Really great. Yes. That's such a great point.
And that's what I love about TCM. It's like, it just is. There was a point in my recovery, 2.5 years in, where my acupuncturist said to me, there's no yin for me to pull from. Like, there's nothing else for me to draw from. So you just have to rest. Like, you have to, he was like, you can't go on a bus. You can't go out of your neighborhood. I worked in my house. So he's like, I know you have to work. I'm the breadwinner. But when you're not working, you're laying down or you're eating, because there's no raw material left for me to work with. Right. And it's like, that's the point that you can get to. And people come to me and they have a diastasis, for instance, which is a separation of their abdominal wall. And they've done everything. They're doing Restore Your Core. They're working with this person. They're eating all the right things. But what they're not doing is just stopping. Mm-hmm. Like, just stop the routine, stop going to the park, just stay in your house. Just like, and I mean, it's kind of like what the pandemic has made us do. Just like, what does it look like to just not be able to plan all the trips and do all the things and go all the places, is like their diastasis heals when they just stop, stop, even if what they're doing is all the right things.
I love that you brought in the pandemic, because really this is a forced yin time. So it's really an opportunity to come back in towards ourselves versus learning as women growing up. We're very yang, very male energy. And it's like, no, that's not who we are. That's part of who we are, but we can't be 100% yang. That's why we're, one of the reasons why we're having all these troubles in the first place, because there's this complete imbalance in the world, right?
Oh, can you imagine?
And also coming from fertility, right? Like the fact that fertility is even an industry is just crazy to me. It's like fertility is the most basic thing there is. But that's why, like, as mammals, we're like, that's how far out of balance we are, that fertility is now an industry. The most basic thing is reproduction. And as a species, it's the thing we're having the hardest time with. Totally. We're getting pregnant, sustaining pregnancy, and also having babies. Like birthing babies is statistically becoming harder. That's telling us how out of balance we are with the natural world. That's not that. And that's what I loved about, I forgot the author's name who wrote that, Between Heaven and Earth, but that's what she was talking about, how when she came from China, like, there wasn't a word for PMS. It doesn't even exist. It's like we invented this thing, PMS, and then we name it fertility. We're infertile, and then we give it a name, and then we attach to the name.
Yes.
Or we're postpartum depression. A lot of people have never had an underworld journey. The postpartum period will take you to the underworld, even if you have great care. It is a yin time, and it is a time of dissolution and death. And we are dying to parts of ourselves. And so that doesn't have to be bad. It's just that it's bad when you only value what you can see. If we value the feminine, we have to value what we can't see. And it's why I get really frustrated, because I feel like we've had like 10 minutes of, as women, of like some acknowledgement of the postpartum time. And now I'm seeing all this stuff about, well, dads have postpartum depression too. And like, what about this? Yeah, but dads didn't push a baby out of their vagina.
Yeah.
Dads didn't grow the baby. Dads didn't have the hormonal changes. It just didn't happen. So it's like, it's another way of saying, well, the body doesn't really matter. It's really emotions, or it's really mental health. And it's like, no, the body is actually the thing that's determining. And furthermore, the nervous system, which is the driver of all those systems, is really what's dictating so much of that.
Well, and dads having postpartum depression would probably just be that disconnect of not knowing how to support. And if they did just support mom, as you're saying, imagine what the world would look like, right? Not just the postpartum period, the world itself. There'd be less divorces, and there would be better connection and less triggering of autoimmune conditions and chronic illness like that. It is such a sacred period. So thank you for writing the book. Honestly, I was so excited to listen to it on Audible and share it with my patients, and even do a spin-off program ourselves to help people, because we want to help them have the right resources and the right care, whether it's they can't afford, a doula, but just like you're saying, imagine there were seniors connected with women who perhaps didn't have the care, and it was just a thing. The seniors would feel valued, and the new moms would be taken care of. And yeah, I love your ideas. You're brilliant.
Thank you.
So we have 5 minutes left.
Read it, or some of the partners who read it, they actually become the gatekeepers for their partners. And that's the thing about the book, is Beautiful. Like, it would be better if aunts, like, send it, if you're pregnant, send it to your aunt, send it to your mom, send it to your partner.
Totally.
Because then you're not saying, I want this. Then you're saying, the book told me to do this.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of love it. Easier. Yes. It
Outsource
takes
it.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
So did we
and also
cover
there's
all
cards. Did you guys
points?
know there's cards?
I love it.
No. So tell us about those.
Yeah. So there's a deck. It's 52 cards. And it's just like a thought for the day, or a recipe, or a meditation based on the book. But there's like 20% new material. So for people who are just overwhelmed by the book, there's cards. And then there's a journal coming out June 29th that you can pre-order. It's so beautiful. It's one of my students she's Swedish, and she did all of the artwork for it. So that's like an amazing keepsake, so that you can record this and offer it to your children, so that they can remember what it was like. Because I don't know about your parents, but my mom's like, I don't really remember. Yeah, breastfeeding was hard. I don't really remember. But you can record it, and they can actually get the wisdom that you wish you would have had.
That's awesome.
So 5, rest, nourishing food, loving touch. The fourth one is presence of wise women or spiritual companionship. So we are mammals and we need to be around other bodies. Bodies need bodies. That's how we regulate each other. And if you're co-regulating a baby all the time, you need someone co-regulating you that's attuned to you. So again, like I think people are pretty accustomed to the meal train idea now, and people put together meal trains of food delivery when they have
Talk
babies.
about that though. Even though they may be accustomed, tell us more.
So a meal train, there's even, I think, mealtrain.com, there's some apps out there, is basically where you ask your community if they'll bring you food postpartum. And if you feel uncomfortable asking, I oftentimes tell the person, have the person who arranged your baby shower or your mother blessing be the person who reaches out and coordinates the meal train. And, in my book, I have some recipes. You might include a recipe. That's happened to me recently. A friend of mine had a baby and then her older child got COVID. And so she was just like underwater, and she just wrote me and she sent me the recipe and said, can you make me this? And it was so much easier than just saying, can you cook for me? Cause then I'm like, oh, what should I make? And it was just like, make this recipe. So I made it for like 5 times because I was like, success, So yeah, just be specific about what you might like, or give people a few meal options. And then I would do, if I was going to have another baby, I would have a friend train. So I would have an organization of friends that were coming. And if it was out of town, now it's the pandemic, that's probably a little more challenging. But for me, friends are like food. And like, I really need to have somebody that knows me. I was out of the country, like I said, so I didn't really have anyone that spoke English and that spoke my language. So like creating a way that you can connect, and not, you have to know yourself, and there's lots of advice about, shorter visits and all those kinds of things. But I would have a train, at least of a phone call that I knew I was going to have that was for me. So presence of wise women. And then the last one is contact with nature. So that can happen through herbs. That can happen through putting your rocking chair near a window so that you can see outside. Any way that you can feel. It could happen through how you're cooking, like that shows you nature. You can't rush nature. You can't force flowers to bloom. They're not going to, you can watch them, you can water them, you can create conditions for them to bloom, but you can't make them bloom. You can't make water boil faster. Well, I guess you can get one of those kettles or whatever. Bad analogy. But, if you have when I send out postpartum doulas to clients, sometimes some of them I have them just drop off the food, but some of them I have them cook at their house, because that process of cooking, and then the mom will come and sit with the person in the kitchen, is just a regulating process of like, if you're having 4 burners going, it's going to take a while for the meal to be ready. But like, we need to get used to a pace that's more organic, that's not us rushing everything and trying to make it happen faster. That said, there's a lot out there. We need to eat warm foods, whole foods, but eating is better than not eating.
Agreed.
Eating frozen food is better than not eating food at all. And so I know a lot of women now are preparing foods and freezing them. You're just doing your best. As long as you're attending to that, then that's great. Doesn't have to be perfect, but just keeping these needs in mind and doing it a little bit more than you maybe think you should.
So wise.
Oh my gosh, Kimberly, we love having you here. I wish that we could have the whole day to speak with you. And I know we're all needing to get on with our lives. And but thank you. Not that this is not living our lives. Like, we are so super thrilled and honored. And I really want this podcast to be like totally everybody on earth should actually listen to this.
Totally.
So, and then again, we'll have our show notes and we'll put down some of the books that you recommended. So we'll have to get around, circle back with you about the books. Okay. And maybe you'll come back and we'll speak some more. I love your passion and your wisdom, and
you're so fluent, and I love the way you speak. You're just beautiful to listen to on your Audible and now in person or via, Zoom. So thank you.
Thank you.
And so before we close off, let's end up on a high note and talk about, one last thing where you share with us what filled your cup today or yesterday. Or last week?
Oh, good question. Well, I've ordered this food company called Daily Harvest, which is frozen food, frozen plant-based food, which I usually never eat frozen food. But because I'm in this period of time where I'm planning a book release party, both online and in person, and, my new book's coming out and everything, it's actually really nice to just have food that tastes good. It's not like, I wouldn't give it like an A+, but it's like good enough. And I don't have anyone bringing me a plate of food, which is kind of my love language. Like, could you just bring me a plate of food? So that's how I filled my cup, by ordering the daily, like just jumping off the fence, ordering the Daily Harvest and eating it.
Awesome.